So I've shared the screen. So today we are starting with a new chapter and the first in the series of four, where Mother takes up every part, like she spoke about in The Science of Living, the first chapter, the fourfold or fivefold order of education, and she begins with physical education. So, Nishi, would you like to start and read the first two till here?
Yes, Didi. So, of all the domains of human consciousness, the physical is the one most completely governed by method, order, discipline, process. The lack of plasticity and receptivity in matter has to be replaced by a detailed organization that is both precise and comprehensive. In this organization, one must not forget the interdependence and interpenetration of all the domains of the being. However, even a mental or vital impulse to express itself physically must submit to an exact process. That is why all education of the body, if it is to be effective, must be rigorous and detailed, far-sighted and methodical. This will be translated into habits. The body is a being of habits. But these habits should be controlled, disciplined, while remaining flexible enough to adapt themselves to circumstances and to the needs of the growth and development of the being. All education of the body should begin at birth and continue throughout life. It is never too soon to begin, nor too late to continue.
Thanks. Each and every word the mother has used, there is nothing superfluous. Every word has a place in physical education, method, order, discipline, process, plasticity, receptivity, detailed organization, precision, comprehensiveness. So these are the characteristics that she speaks about of a rigorous and detailed physical education. So it is not just for creating an impression or something. Each word one has to, while designing a program for oneself or for children or anybody else, uh, each word has its value. This is something I want to emphasize. And then she's also talking about the interpenetration. So this is true at every level. When we will speak of vital, when we'll speak of mental, always there is an interpenetration of other levels of consciousnesses. But she's saying that because we need to express things through the body, therefore, if we want to be absolutely true to the impulse that has come, the inspiration that has come, the idea that has come, then the exactitude of the process is very important. And then she speaks about habits, of course. I think this concept is kind of going away from our modern culture. There is a rebellion against habits almost, it seems. But it's like a scientific fact that the physical, and we know through our own experience so well, whether to do with posture or the way we breathe, it is so difficult to change anything at this stage. Not impossible, but difficult, definitely. And the difficulty increases the more we defer it. And yet, at the same time, like always, she brings in the contrary element also, because while order and structure is important, yet flexibility is equally important, so that always it's the larger, the higher aim, the conditions, life is organic. And when we are training the being, it is not to create hurdles in that organic process. So it also has to be flexible. But flexibility without forming a base, uh, which is what I feel happens these days more, becomes uh, detrimental. And any discipline you see, whether it is like Harpreet is here, so learning Kathak or any dance, uh, you have to learn the steps the way are. Later on, you can be innovative, creative, change them, be flexible with it, do it this way, that way. But there has to be a solid base, and there has to be a reason and a purpose for the change. And if required, then the ability to adapt. So if I have healthy eating habits, but suppose I'm traveling in a place where what I'm used to eating is not there, my habits have to be flexible enough, and my body has not to then fall ill because I didn't get what I normally eat every day. So I'm just giving an example of this flexibility which she's talking about. And the final idea that it has to begin at birth and continue throughout life. Yes, I knew it. Come.
No, actually, I was very taken with your example of Harpreet's Kathak because I think it's a really good example. But the big difference between, say, learning Kathak and just examining one's own body or working on one's body is that with Kathak or any dance form, if you're learning something which requires a certain discipline, then you have an objective towards which you're working. So your guru will tell you, no, no, not like this. If you want to do, if you want to express yourself, this is how the expression should be. So there is someone always teaching you about how you should be and towards and what your objective is, and therefore what you're trying to communicate. I think that is what we lack when we are regular people, when we just have our body and we don't know what to do with it, we have no particular objective, and so therefore we don't discipline ourselves because we don't have that objective with which towards which we are working, and therefore we don't know what are the steps that are needed to form the routine. We kind of stumble upon it, and by eventually figure it out, and sort of work our way into it. But it would be nice if we had a structure to begin with,
Mhm.
and we knew that, okay, if you do this is what is going to lead to this, as one would with a dancer, for example.
Very true. Although parents do have an objective, and one of their primary concerns, I think, is to keep the child healthy. But then, what is the notion of health and what is the scope it covers? There, none of us are trained. We have not been educated. So that becomes itself a problem. Anybody else? Hello,
Yeah,
Ruby.
so like she's saying, the interdependence and the interpenetration habits, when she says that this translates into habits. Now, we all know the interdependence and the interpenetration of our vital and everything. And most of the time, I think these are the things that, even though the parents want, but we think sometimes, okay, let it be for this one time or this, the flexibility that we give in. And then we are not able to step up ourselves to uh, get back into it. And these days, I think the order and discipline is being taken absolutely in a very, I mean, it's only taken one way, it's only taken one sided. Like discipline, everybody, I think the, the common understanding of discipline has become very negative, and so everybody takes discipline and order to be in that negative meaning. And then that's where I feel and I have experienced myself, and also with uh, lots of people who've shared that that's where the trouble comes in, because the body is all about habits. And yeah, so there is one famous line by Michelle Obama that I always use on my children: what you practice you become. So that way I think that the order and discipline and the interpenetration, we have to be really careful about how to manage this part with children.
Harpreet wants to. Yes, Harpreet.
Yeah, I mean, since you mentioned about the dance bit, but what I think is, I mean, all of what you said. First of all, I agree with it, and you, one thing Anuradha mentioned about how exact and measured or precise the words are. That how somehow struck with me. And now when I'm speaking, I'm thinking that the beauty of dance is that you know the inner measurement of what you want to say. What I mean by inner measurement is, of course, all these years I've seen that uh, despite having a cultural and a vocabulary of that particular form, which have of course been evolved culturally, a lot of other factors which I'll not go into, but that exact measurement of what I wish to say has to come through me, and that is something where this interpenetration is something. I'm sorry, slight problem of focus. So is very vivid, but even in the good dance forms, how many dancers really can take this education of body, because एक जीवन ना जैसे कहते हैं कि कम पड़ जाता है, बिकॉज जो फुल ऑन डांसर्स हैं, परफॉर्मर्स हैं, दे ऑफ कोर्स विल बी carried away, और उनको responsibility होगा to do that, but the physical education aspects that come out from their practice, वो शायद कहीं रह जाता होगा, और उसकी एक मतलब in our society, even the way I studied physical education in Sri Aurobindo Ashram during my field work, I really see that I really aspire for that. Maybe I wish to say that I really wish to aspire. I'm not saying it is lacking, it is not there, logon ko time nahi hai. But of course it involves my own mistakes also, as I read what mother has written or reread what it has been written here. So to engage with body from the perspective of education, and whatever form you are doing, I mean, or any exercise that you are doing, because in ashram, that's why perhaps they make compulsory ki har roz, unka discipline is ki aaj games hongi, aaj swimming hogi, aaj gymnast honge, unlike the world which wants you to perfect in one. So I just aspire for that with this reading, that we really get that whole aspect of getting educated about your body as you pass through these experiences of sports or dance. So that's all I wish to say and aspire with all of you. Thank you.
Okay. Sagarika, will you read this para?
Physical education has three principal aspects. One, control and discipline of the functioning of the body. Number two, an integral, methodical, and harmonious development of all the parts and movements of the body. And number third, correction of any defects and deformities.
Yeah.
Should I continue? Oh.
So normally when we, first of all, like we have been discussing, we have never been really taught about physical education. PT period हो गया, या आप games के लिए चले गए, खो खो खेल लिया, badminton khel liya. They're patchwork. There has never been a systematic physical education, even in mothers where I studied, and which is kind of based on um, integral. It's not really, but yeah, I mean, it is inspired by the mother and Sri Aurobindo. Even there, there was no systematic physical education. And normally, when you say what comes under physical education, I think before reading this, or if we had never read this, I wonder what list we would have made. Ila?
Um, yeah, I would have made a list which is actually a very interdependent list.
Such
But so, for example, if you say what is physical education, I would have said it has to do with the discipline of the mind. Because if you discipline your mind, then you can discipline your body. The two are interrelated. It's like, for example, why do elite athletes play over the win that they're going to have in their minds before they actually do it? Because the mind creates the story and tells you you can, and this is how you're going to win it. And so the link between the mind and the body needs to be established right in the beginning. And so when you understand, how integrated you are as a person and how everything is dependent on everything else, and you understand the place that each element has, then working on the physical aspect makes it, there's a point to it, and there's a method in which you're doing it. It's not my body and my mind. I mean, they're not separate, so, and the concept of grit, the concept of determination, the concept of being strong-willed, of being passionate. I mean, these are all qualities of the vital, but the physical cannot do without any of those, because you can't get a routine, you can't get trained, you can't develop unless you have all that. And so so the list needs actually to be a sort of comprehensive one.
Anybody else? Like, if you had to say, what are the principal aspects of physical education? Although it might be a little difficult to be totally uninfluenced now, but still, normally when one thinks of physical education, at least I know for myself, I would have never put these three there.
I may not have put the correction of defects and deformities, but I would have put the first two.
Sorry?
I may not have put the third one in,
Huh.
definitely the first two. But I think, again, as I said earlier, I mean, I think, for all of us, at least speaking for myself, I kind of stumbled upon it. It's not that I was told, I was taught. I wish I was told and taught.
Yeah, right. So if we look at each one and try and understand, what does this mean? Control and discipline of the functioning of the body. How is the first and second, how are they different from each other?
What I understand from that is a little bit of what Ila actually just said. Control has a lot to do, in a way, of how your mind, when you program your mind, when you through your mind, you make an intention. So you are controlling your physical from that angle, which is from your mind. And discipline of the functioning of the body is through repetitive and making a habit and doing it daily or whichever way you set it up to forming your discipline. I don't know, I may be wrong. I'm just taking a tukka.
So I think for me, control begins from the first when the child is born, and then as per what we do in developmental psychology is that a child is supposed to direct first instinct sucking, of course, because that is how the child knows the world. And then the control, of course, comes with the bowel movements. Eventually, they have to come because they are linked with shame and taking initiation ultimately. but the first thing is the, one of the developmental psychologists who wanted a philosophical basis of science said that, I'm not naming because I don't want to throw the big theory words, is that the child knows the world through his reflexes. The word he used was reflexes. So I think the control comes, and there is a pattern, of course, because we are genetically designed, so there is a pattern. But that genetic designing of moving the body, of sucking and all that, can be ultimately put to some use as learned by child in the first 2 years. So that forms, if we link it to that, and to me that then the control and uh, uh, discipline would come, because discipline is not force, is not by force. I don't mean the energy or the force, but it doesn't mean suppression or something, uh, I mean, it has a lot of purpose also. I'm disciplined because at a particular time, then, body simply knows that it has to do that, sometimes in negative ways and sometimes very much in positive ways.
Okay.
So I think, to me, control and discipline, if we link it with that psychological functioning of uh, the mind comes, I mean, initially it's that the child's reflexes are its mind, basically. If we observe a child, what a young child is doing, and then eventually we see it in our movements also. To me, it means that. But if you would have asked me physical education, I would have rather said to know about your body, to know about your anthropometric measures, to know about your anatomy, as much as little or more. Because people most of the time, don't even know that. So to know it completely from a biological basis is also what I would have, said is very important part of physical education.
So again, here the mother has kind of subdivided the physical education into three main things. And I hope she will talk about all these three and explain what she means when she says control and functioning of the body. And then when she says integral, methodical, harmonious development, all the parts and movements, and then correction of defects and deformities. So let's go on. Prerna, this paragraph.
It may be said that from the very first days, even the first hours of his life, the child should undergo the first part of this program as far as food, sleep, evacuation, etc. are concerned. If the child from the very beginning of his existence learns good habits, it will save him a good deal of trouble and inconvenience for the rest of his life. And besides, those who have the responsibility of caring for him during his first years will find their task very much easier.
So when she says the first part of the program, she's referring to control and discipline of the functioning of the body. So this control and discipline, she's saying, is with regards to food, sleep, evacuation, etc. The first physical needs. So there, some kind of control and discipline should start coming in. And what one needs, how much one needs, when one needs. Same way with sleep, and of course, the whole process of evacuation. So many parents do it, toilet training and all that is part of the early years. Here, when she's saying that, I don't know if I've read it elsewhere or if she talks about it here further on, but what Harpreet was referring to, I would include even that is my understanding. I'll have to find the reference if it is coming from mother's words or it is my own interpretation, about even the internal functioning of the organs, how the organs work. And there, the knowledge of anatomy becomes important, which only if you take science you are taught. Otherwise, you don't even know where your liver is, where your lungs are, where you have a cough and just you take a medicine and that's it. But you have no idea if there is acidity, indigestion, what is happening inside, where are these organs, what is responsible, how the food gets digested, what happens. We have no idea and we are never taught. Only much later, if you happen to be a science student, then you read about it. So, uh, designing a physical education program, I would include that also. Obviously, not for very little children, but with little children also, you can talk about, like today I was with 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and we were talking while we were having tiffin, the same thing that, okay, don't eat while, don't speak while eating. And then not, instead of just saying that, to go on to, okay, what happens when we speak while eating, so that there's a food pipe, there is a windpipe, and if the food goes into this, so telling them, making them aware what is happening inside, and not just, don't do this, this is not good, or you will cough, but yes, why will you cough? So every moment can become an opportunity to get into what are the processes the body is going through.
I did that a lot regarding anything. Like my favorite part is, of course, I love books and I have a huge collection. And my main aim was not to collect storybooks, but also to collect storybooks, but to collect books on every and any topic. So even when we would be, there was a friend of mine who would tell me that you explain too much to your children. You tell them about everything. So you shouldn't, but I would say that no, I think they can. So at every age, there is an understanding with the child, and you can talk about everything, right from the stars to the planets to your body to everything, everybody's business. You can talk to them.
True.
That's how they learn about life.
Ila, you wanted to say something?
It's a little different. I kind of like the idea of, a child being given a structure right in the beginning, and you know, so the program is the program is sort of specified. This is how you poop, this is how you pee, this is how you wake up, and to and it's a brilliant time to actually, program the child, because that you can do, right? So that there's a certain discipline about when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you eat, how you eat. And if you set it in place quickly, then it'll stand you in good stead, for the rest of your life. But I think that's usually not the case. I mean, when I was growing up all those 100 years ago, my parents were surprisingly disciplined, but I think it was for the wrong reasons. Meaning, like, I think that they wanted to go and party because we were very young, very, very young parents. And so, because of that, both my brother and I, got to get to bed really early. So, we were fed dinner by 6:30, 7 o'clock, we were put into bed. And I can tell you that 60 years later, I'm still thinking that, oh, wow, I mean, that's a throwback to when I was 6, because I just feel that, those are the kinds of things that settle in,
Yeah.
those kind of things they become habits. And I'm not saying my parents knew anything. They didn't. They just stumbled upon it. So, but I think it's a really good thing if you can get it done with kids.
And I would include posture definitely to it. Yeah, Ruhi?
Yeah, I was saying that we did the same. Like I still do it. I never made my children not eat at on a chair and a table. We still follow the routine of eating together and eating at the same time every night, and all of these things. And as a parent, we wouldn't venture into any programs where we had to go and disturb the evening time of the child, so that we would give them dinner on time and bathe them, and then have our routine of story time and the bedtime and all of that, because that actually gives peace to not just you inside, but the general household. And it's much easier to have things in place rather than feel overwhelmed about everything, because with children you need to keep that much of buffer, um, and then they shouldn't fall apart. But I have seen families who do not have a routine for children sleeping and eating in any part of the house or in the on the bed, and things like that, which I thought it still helps me.
Ruhi wanted to say something.
I I just wanted to add to what is being discussed, that uh, to a large extent, like I grew up, if I spoke about myself, going from what Ela was saying, grew up in a hostel, so definitely there were strict timings, there was everything inculcated. Yet when I was moved into, so circumstances make you to a large degree, like the famous words of one of the poets was, the circumstances really make you. And then I find with my children, just like what Pooja said, we were very strict with strict as in a nice way. I would feed them by 7, they would be in bed. And that was the way it was. They were always in bed by 8 after storytelling and read and bathing, because they had an early morning even in Vasant Valley. But come to college, when they decided to pursue their careers, which is like Ria's a doctor and Manya's a health professional in Chicago, and because of the demands of that studying for those subjects, uh, they would still eat on the table, but they would say that we want to watch something because we've already studied so much now, that we just want to just de-stress. So they may not watch in front of the TV because they want to watch their own programs. And I mean, I found with Ria, when she was studying here in the last year for her NEET, she just wanted that time to eat and just be by herself, because she'd been studying 8 hours, 9 hours at a stretch. And then again, she knows she has to get back to studying another 6, 7 hours before she goes to bed. So it changes. And at a certain point, after they turn adults, you don't have control over their timings, just like nobody has control over my timings after a certain age. So I think that changes with, so you start with a certain intention. It does not necessarily follow through what is the point I'm making. It's not necessary that for the rest of your life, maybe for Ela it worked, but I don't know, it doesn't work now because
No,
with the
let me
social
just
media and all.
sorry, let me just sort of clarify that. It's not that it worked for me all my life. It's not that I have
Mm,
been like this all my life. I have gotten to become much more like this now in my 60s than I was in my 20s and my 30s. My 20s, my 30s, of course, I was an early riser, but I would party like 18 hours. I had 18-hour days, 20-hour days. I would work all day, all night for 2 days at a stretch. So you do what you're required to do because, that's the nature of whatever job you're in. So I worked for, like 2 days and nights continuously because I was supposed to do it at that age. But my point is that there's a base that I have,
yeah.
and my base is what I go back to. So I find looking back on my life that the base that was put into place, like I think what you and Pooja are talking about putting a certain base in place for your kids, when they have kids, when they,
Yeah.
to rest, when they have the luxury of being able to do what they like to do, they might go back to that setting. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, when we have conversations, that's what they always say. They say that if we have kids, we'll do the childhood exactly the way you did our childhood. Like they often say that when we discuss having kids. So they want time. They want to make their career goals, meet their career goals, their financial goals before they have children, so that they can do that with them. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's carry on. Ruhi, you want to read this paragraph?
Sure, thank you. Naturally, this education, if it is to be rational, enlightened, and effective, must be based upon a minimum knowledge of the human body, of its structure and its functioning. As the child develops, he must gradually be taught to observe the functioning of his internal organs so that he may control them more and more and see that this functioning remains normal and harmonious. As for positions, postures, and movements, bad habits are formed very early and very rapidly, and these may have disastrous consequences for his whole life. Those who take the question of physical education seriously and wish to give their children the best conditions for normal development will easily find the necessary indications and instructions. The subject is being more and more thoroughly studied, and many books have appeared and are still appearing, which give all the information and guidance needed.
So this is quite clear. So this is the reference. It is in this chapter only that she talks about this internal functioning and also the postures and all that. And then she says that now the time when she was writing, which is already 100 years, 70 years or something ago, 75 years, already there was literature coming out. The subject was being taken up of physical education in specific circles, but still literature was available. So she's saying exactly how to do it, you can always refer to that. But these are the broad principles. Harpreet, will you read this para, please? Are you
Can I
ready?
prefer not to read? It becomes too much of screen for me, and I'm still struggling with my eyes. I'll tell you the story. I'll call you and I'll tell
Okay, Pooja.
It is not possible for me here to go into the details of the application, for each problem is different from every other, and the solution should suit the individual case. The question of food has been studied at length and in detail. The diet that helps children in their growth is generally known, and it may be very useful to follow it. But it is very important to remember that the instinct of the body, so long as it remains intact, is more reliable than any theory. Accordingly, those who want their child to develop normally should not force him to eat food which he finds distasteful, for most often the body possesses a sure instinct as to what is harmful to it unless the child is particularly capricious.
This is a very interesting and especially at that time, and I would say even today, a very revolutionary idea because even today parents are find it very difficult to practice this. How can the child know what is good for it? The parents know, the adults know. So uh,
I
and
have a comment here. Okay, sorry.
as always, this always remains the underlying approach that there may be broad principles and all, but everything has to be seen for each individual. Ultimately, each individual is unique, and the more the conscious each individual becomes, they are able to choose what works for them. And that's why, unlike like most religions divide food into sattvic, tamasic, rajasic, and they give a lot of importance to ki ye khana chahiye, ye nahi khana chahiye, this has this effect. It's interesting to see what is the approach mother takes to this. So to give you an example, in the ashram, there are two dining rooms. There is one big dining room where we all go when we stay there, and all the ashramites eat. I'm talking of Pondicherry. They eat their food. And then there is another dining room which is known as the corner house because it's on the corner of a road. And that dining room is meant for school students because ashram has a school. In the main dining room, absolutely vegetarian food is served. In the corner house, not only eggs, but non veg is served. And mother started this. And when she started that, the initial ashramites, they were aghast. How can in the ashram we can have a dining hall where non veg is being served? And the mother said, children are not here to do yoga. They have not chosen to become yogis, and their bodies need the right sustenance. So we have to give them the food their body bodies need. And that's another matter that some ashramites who love non-veg end up going there. That is between them and their sincerity, and if they're doing yoga or whatever they're doing. Because the mother has also spoken about the consciousness every food item has and what it does to your consciousness when you ingest it. At the same time, she has also said not killing animals. That I don't eat non-veg because, oh, killing animals is so bad. She says, what's the difference? You are killing vegetables. That's equally bad. So don't be moralistic about it. That if you are not killing animals, you are superior, but you are killing vegetables. Vegetables also have life. So in any case, you are taking life. But it is the impact, how evolved or what the consciousness of the animal is, and what the consciousness of a vegetable is, and what impact it has on you when you ingest it. And the other thing is the attitude with which you eat, and how that attitude changes the nature of the food. You can have the most sattvic food with the most tamasic attitude, and it will convert into tamas in you. And you can have the most tamasic food with a very sattvic attitude, and it will have a different impact. So, but it is all a game of consciousness. The problem is the mind can and the vital can join together to trick me to saying, oh, I'm having fried, but I'm doing yoga and I will eat it very consciously. But it is actually my desire which is pushing me to that. On the other hand, I personally have had tried this, like if I have to go to, Chandni Chowk or this thing, have street food. I want to have that street food, or there is nothing else and I have to eat it. There were times when I would do this, kind of create a shield within me that I should not get affected. I should not fall ill. My stomach should be okay. My throat should be okay. And it worked, even if it was unhygienic food. It worked. But when I'm not conscious, then even home cooked food, if it has a tendency to irritate my throat, it will. So it is just interesting that how we cannot fix it into boxes. And yet there is a truth in everything. There is a truth in Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic. There is a truth in not prescribing that if you are doing spiritual discipline, you have to eat. They have not prescribed like that you have to eat like this only. Yes, Ruhi, you wanted to say something.
I was actually talking from the point of view of children. So with my older daughter, because I had not studied this when Manya, she was at Lavanir. So I think we had done this. I think that time teaching. So or whatever reason, I had studied a bit of this. So I let her eat what she wanted to, very genuinely, whatever she wanted to, without judgment. And she only wanted butter, milk, and anything white. Like she liked like all these dairy products and butter, and if roti at all. She didn't want vegetables. She didn't want chicken. She was vegetarian for many years in her early years. With Ria, I was very particular. I must give her this, except for the first year when you have to follow what the doctor says. And I find now in this age, when they're 26 and 24, Ria can eat anything you give her. And Manya is very, very picky about her food. So it's also something that I was just commenting on. It's just an observation that I'm not saying that it's just two children in the world. It's
No,
not
no,
a,
good you brought it up, because you see, the problem is here. This is where the problem is. Instinct of the body, so long as it remains intact. When does this instinct get spoiled? Very early, maybe even by 6 months. If you read that book, I think Whispers of Nature has that.
yes, that's the book
Yeah, the experiment with food.
yes.
For others who don't might not know it, uh, you can check it out in this compilation, Whispers of Nature from the ashram, where it is a recorded experiment which they did with 6-month-old babies. And they did it over a few months or a year or 2 years, something like that. So, right from very early, when the child was able to point, what they would do, they would have all these babies and they would keep lots of dishes, but one dish would have only one kind of food. So if something had rice, only dal, only chicken, only fruit, whatever. So 30, 40 dishes were there. And if the child, when it was meal time, now all these children are kind of sitting there or lying there, I don't know what is happening. But if they point to any food, even if it is by mistake or their hands are just waving, immediately that food was given to that child, and so on for every other. And they continued this experiment for months. And they found that over a period of time, a few months, every child automatically adjusted and received the requisite nutrients. So it's not that they only were taking carbs and carbs and carbs and they were taking only this and this. Over time, they got a full supply of whatever their body needed. But this was done with very young children. And this instinct, when I observe children, because of adult intervention, wrong intervention, it gets spoiled very easily. And again, this is something, you know, once, and this is at a much later age because instinct of the body generally is earlier, but also at times we feel. There was a time when I was in a place where I had very little access to medical facilities and things like that. And I fell ill. And I was staying in very kind of poor conditions, literally poor conditions. And uh, I was also practicing more intense in my yogic practice, so to say. So something came and from the body told me what to have. And it was not something I had ever had before or I knew I had knowledge of. It came to me that have this. And then I made that and I had it, and the body got cured. So that was the instinct of the body, I believe, which told me, and all of us experience it at times, when suddenly we feel from within that this is the right thing to have at this moment or whatever. But it is a very tricky thing because it gets spoiled. And the vital, this caprice and likes, dislikes come in. And then to follow it and to leave it to the child can actually may not have very, like you're saying, it might make the child finicky or lower the immunity even, etc.
Yeah, that's true. But I just, because you were giving this big example, I have also at this point wanted to, because we were saying how the mind and the vital is, there was a study which I don't know if this is the right time to bring it. There was a study that Daniel Goleman and the ones who've written Emotional Intelligence and his predecessor had done on young 3-year-olds. And what they did was, it's a very famous study, which kind of helped them. So they did this study where they gave, since it's America, they gave them marshmallows. And they gave them a condition that if you can eat, that if you, these are 2 marshmallows or whatever, say 4 marshmallows, but if you don't eat it now, and you wait for this period of time, we'll double it. And there were children who waited, who were able to restrain, like almost all American kids love sugar. And so it was a total white community, I think, at that time in the 60s or 70s when they did it. But because the demographics are given, and then they kind of stopped themselves from eating. There were some who ate immediately, and then there were these who didn't. And then they did a study over 30 years over these children, and they found that the ones who abstained actually were more emotionally intelligent, were leaders in their fields, were able to show remarkable, because they had the way to kind of say were able to, even at that young age of 3, were able to say that, no, I'm not going to, they didn't fall into bad habits of drugs and, other kinds of abuse. So, yeah, that was what was an
Mm.
interesting thing that was done on children at that time. And then it led to the theory, to lot of the studies that they did on emotional intelligence and multiple intelligence.
I wanted to share that just like we were talking about giving them information and letting them know about the functioning of the body and all. So we as a family always ate everything that was, and it was same for the children, and we didn't force them, but there isn't a thing, any veggie or any carb or any kind of dish or dairy product or whatever that my children would squirm their faces at, even now. And I let them. I didn't force them, but we just talked about this, and we showed them by example that we all ate, and not just me or my husband in the family, but everybody. Even when we had gathered as a larger family, and we just spoke about how this helps in this and this helps in this, and touchwood, my children have never refused a single veggie or any kind of food which is healthy. In fact, they would have refused other things. But and even now, like my daughter in college, she just goes, she picks up something from the mess, and she cooks something on her own to include some part of it, and things like that. So this part got sorted out, and they eat as much as their instinct and their body wants to, no force feeding, and they were allowed to pick from the table. And that, so I strongly believe in this, that this example that we give, because like you were saying, Anuradha, the interference and the way the adults talk about food, and they it really I have in my own family somewhere where somebody wouldn't like Loki or things like that, and then they would say something that, so the kids also don't want to touch it.
Yeah, of course.
I also wanted to say that what Pooja just touched, that it's about the what and ye nahi khana, wo nahi khana, but also about the quantity. I think our intervention kills that instinct also of how much to eat. And we start eating more in terms of measured ki itna khana hai versus how much my body needs at this point of time, which may vary. So that was one thing that struck me while I was reading this and listening to everybody. And the second thing was around the interconnection of the physical and the vital. When when you're lonely, some people, I think including me, I tend to eat more. And that really shows, and that got me thinking that, what am I eating for? Is it for my emotions, or is it for my body? That I was thinking. So I think they're very strongly connected.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Even I was thinking for a very long time that it is not about control, discipline. I think the relationship you have with your body and the food. Like in my childhood, I was disciplined to eat what is cooked, but I had never made any relationship with food. I can eat anything. Today also I can eat anything, but I was never got nutrition out of it. Because it is a rule in the family, ek cheez baniye, aap as a child you have to eat it. Okay, done and dusted. But but I have never had a relationship with food. And in fact, I had a bad physical manifestation. My body is a mode of a coping mechanism for me. I fall, I had any emotional stress, I will go for a sleep, I'm better. I will eat a chocolate, I will feel better. I will, so nobody taught me how to have a relationship with the food and my body. Discipline is when it is controlled by a because when we are talking about nutrition, food, family habits. It is coming all from your genetics. It is all coming from your, I am Agarwal, you are Jain, it is, you are Northeastern, intermingling of so many things. Uh, so there, what I'm thinking, because I have been working on my physical being for I can have a better vital being and emotional being, but physical being is a space where I'm still working. And physical space also, I feel ki my home, I am not a very beautiful, cupboardly structured physical space. I'm more better structured in my mind for thoughts, but my cupboard will not look like that. My desk will not look like that. So the relationship is more important than just to make a control. That is what I just thought.
No, I think that's a very important point, Prerna, that you just shared. And it reminds me also of this anecdote from the mother where she gave a lot of importance, like when she would go to for an inspection of the departments, the various departments in the ashram, she would make it a point to look at how things were organized. Because she said this reflects how your mind is organized. If there's clutter in the physical, there will be clutter in the mind. Although you are saying your mind is better organized than your physical is,
Mhm.
but there is also still a
Oh,
relationship.
mhm.
And,
Yes, agree. But
and
the
normally, like if people would, that mother is going to come, let's dump everything into this room or this cupboard because this is where mother will not come. Sure, mother will go there only. And she said, but these things were calling me.
Mhm.
Come and look, take a look at us, how they have kept us. So she gave a lot of importance to this connection between
Mhm.
the mind and the physical and how one reflects the other and helps also. When you organize things physically, it
Yes,
somewhere brings order into the mind. And
yes,
when the mind
yes.
is ordered, then out of laziness, you may not organize, but then what you know how to, where things should go. If you are forced to organize it, maybe you will be able to organize the physical clutter also in a very good way because the mind is organized.
Just a
That,
short thing, my de-stressing thing is to go and put things in order. Because
uh,
when I'm so stressed and confused, I go and open a drawer or a shelf and I start organizing it, and I'm so much relieved. It's like therapy, and then my mind starts working better.
but I want to dwell more on the Nishi question, like when vital, the role of vital and mental with physical manifestation, because we also shared earlier in the reading ki whenever we fall ill, it manifests on physical, when it, matlab, mind. So that is an area.
Definitely. As we go on and we read about, we have not finished the physical also, and then we go on and read vital and mind. The relationships start becoming, and we can keep discussing, what we have read earlier and how what the relationship is. It's very important to be clear about that because at the end of the day, all these are playing a role in us. It's not just one consciousness. So if anybody has any helpful resource to share, like Ruhi mentioned a study, I will see if that experiment is available online. And Nishi
Yeah,
has.
I just shared a link on the marshmallow experiment only that Ruhi
Yeah,
shared.
that marshmallow
Just share it
experiment is a
in the
very
WhatsApp
famous
group
one.
because this chat will go. Share it in the WhatsApp group,
Yes, I'll share.
the links, and we can then.
ठीक है. Done.
Sagarika has been totally quiet today. Okay. Okay, so we end here. Thank you so
I'm
much.
listening to everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. So last time we had started this chapter on physical education, and we had read about the three aspects that mother gives importance to: the control and discipline of the functioning of the body, in which she's talking also about the internal functioning, the organs, how they function, that awareness, and starting to regulate those. Integral, methodical, harmonious development of all the parts and movements, and correction of any defects and deformities. And the she spoke about that it should start as early as possible. Till where did we say we read? Food. Did we read about food? Did we read this para? The body in its normal state, no intervention. Child should
No, we have to
be
start
given
from
food.
here.
Yeah, this we read, na? Children should be given
No,
food
we
that
have to
suits their
start.
temperament.
No.
Oh, only till here, particularly capricious.
Yes.
Only this much we read. Okay. So, okay, then let's start from here. Sagarika, will you please read this paragraph?
Yes, Nidhi, sure. The body in its normal state. That is to say, when there is no intervention of mental notions or vital impulses, also knows very well what is good and necessary for it. But for this to be effect in practice, one must educate the child with care and teach him to distinguish his desires from his needs. He should be helped to develop a taste for food that is simple and healthy, substantial and appetizing, but free from any useless complications. In his daily food, all the merely stuffs and causes heaviness should be avoided. And above all, he must be taught to eat according to his hunger, neither more nor less, and not to make his meals an occasion to satisfy his greed or gluttony. From one's very childhood, one should know that one eats in order to give strength and health to the body and not to enjoy the pleasures of the palate. Child should be given food. This child should be given food that suits their temperament, prepared in a way that ensures hygiene and cleanliness, that is pleasant to the taste and yet very simple. This food should be chosen and apportioned, apportioned according to the age of the child and his regular activities. It should contain all the chemical and dynamic elements that are necessary for his development and the balanced growth of every part of his body. Should
Okay.
I continue?
No, let's. So, in itself, the paragraph is simple. The practice is more difficult, of course. Any questions, any comments, anything you need summarized? I just want to highlight this very important caveat that she has put there, which till date I think very few of us are able to do for ourselves, even. Educate the child with care and teach him to distinguish between desires and needs. This how to distinguish between what is my desire and what is my need. This is the key to healthy eating. So, this, and of course, if I learn how to distinguish between desire and needs, it will help me not just in with the at the physical, but it will help me in the vital field also. So this one can read the whole paragraph. The rest of the paragraph is very simple: to cook healthy, to make it simple, etc., etc. And the same idea then she's talking about, you know, not to satisfy greed or gluttony, in order to give strength and health, not to enjoy the pleasures. But she says that food should be tasty, but not simply just to enjoy the pleasures of the palate, which happens most restaurants, dining tables, you see, uh, most conversations, time spent around is this. So this is something I wanted to highlight in this paragraph. The rest of the ideas are simple. If anybody has anything to share, say, ask, please go ahead.
I can say, uh, you know, earlier means when I was start reading Mother Sri Aurobindo's books. From that, it's more than that. That I know now. I know the desire and what is need to eat. But still now, I sometimes I could not control myself with what is desire to eat. It's very true.
You can't distinguish or you can't control.
I can distinguish what is desire and need, but still I can't control sometimes, not occasionally I uh, eat with desire.
Okay, good. Anybody? Anybody else
Okay,
wants to?
I also would like to. Uh, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah.
I also wanted, like, sometimes when we see children that they don't like to receive a certain, like to taste certain kind of food or fruit or anything, and in that case then you're wondering, I mean, here we see that uh, I mean, they should be encouraged to kind of try, which is healthy and simple. Then in that case, you wonder that, oh, is it from the space of knowing that the child is refusing, something that the child really knows that this doesn't suit the body, and or is it coming from a desire or fancying that I want this, I don't want this? How does one work in those, understand like those spaces, especially when you're working with children?
Would anybody like to answer her? How does one know when the child is refusing certain food? If it is coming from a genuine response of the physical of the child, or is it because the child is appreciated that wants to palate? Anybody?
Was it me or I couldn't hear Anuradha? Was it
Yeah.
just me?
Yeah. You couldn't hear who? You couldn't hear me?
No, yeah, I do. Maybe it was me, but I'm not sure if everybody else heard you.
Did others hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you, but sometimes your voice is fading out.
Okay, sorry. Uh, okay, so Swapnika, we are kind of entering the game midway. That is the challenge. Because when the mother is writing this, he is establishing a foundation that what should physical education ideally should be. And if one could begin with a blank slate, with a very, a newborn infant, it would be different. Plus, as a teacher, when you are asking, already by the time the children come to you, 3 years they have spent with their parents and continue to spend now also. And their food habits have developed to quite an extent. And what happens at home, we don't know. What is the attitude towards food of the parents? How it is cooked? What kind of food is served? We have no idea. We can talk to the parents, get to know from their tiffin, we can get some idea, kind of things they bring and all that. Then how do you do? Can you really implement all this? I don't think so. I don't think it can be implemented in totality in such a situation, unless you also work with the parents and together you work, because the child is with you 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. The rest of the time, the child is at home and the meals are happening at home. So even parents, if they want to do, they are challenged by other relatives or if they have extended family and all that. So there's so many influences. So the mother, first of all, understand what is the mother saying. Body in its normal state. This normal state is a very important word here. None of us have our bodies in a normal state. Even a 3-year-old child doesn't, the body is no longer in its normal state because so many influences have already come in that it is not in the normal state. So, as a concept, she's explaining that in a normal state, and what is the normal state? When there is no intervention of mental notions or vital impulses. Mental notions can also be so called good. Oh, this is healthy, my child should have this, pediatrician has said that, these days this advertisement came, this drink must be good. All those are mental notions. There is no real knowledge, and there is no connect with the child's physical, because there is no connect with one's physical in the first place, of the parent also. And the vital impulses. In India, especially, you see, if you have diabetes and you are not supposed to eat sugar, you go to your granny's house. I'm speaking from personal experience where I don't have diabetes, but this personal experience, the granny will say, नहीं ये लड्डू तो मैंने बनाया है, घर का बना हुआ है, कुछ नहीं होगा, ये तो खा लो. You know, food is taken as a token of love. And if you refuse food, then it is like you are refusing love. And we overeat, we stuff ourselves, and we eat wrong. And sweets are considered. I have always wondered why प्रसाद में स्वीट ही देते हैं, करेला देना चाहिए ना या कड़वा, तब तो मैं भक्ति से खाऊं. If they are satisfying my palate and I'm saying, yeah, I am just, for the divine, but I want my favorite sweet to be the prasad. Yeah. So all the time, all these things, the influences child is. So the normal state तो है ही नहीं पहली बात तो. तो one can say हम पढ़ ही क्यों रहे हैं? So the ideal is there, and yes, as a teacher, as an educator, one can intervene to the extent. But if you say, oh, the child must be coming from a space of knowing, then you have to know the child in totality and see how the vital works in the child, how the mind works. Is the child in touch with their body consciousness? And you can do activities to help the child come in touch with the body consciousness. Even at our age, if we have not been brought up like that, even at our age, we can do activities. This whole thing of awareness through body, this whole thing which has started, and various other ways, practices that are there. They are there, even people who fast, if they observe their responses and all, it becomes clear that you can awaken this body consciousness at any age. It's more difficult, but it can be done. So to that extent, you can do it. But exactly like this, no. Yes, Prerna wanted to ask something or say, and Harpreet earlier.
No, it was nothing like that. But yes, as a mother, uh, your intuitive self tells that from where the child is coming, that even from for thing like milk, that he's not comfortable. As a mother, you have that sense. I can make it from my voice.
So, am I audible?
Harpreet, you're audible.
Because when I put on my headphones, sometimes my mic doesn't work. So, no, I was listening to all this and been associated with it for now nearly more than 20 years, I would say. See, when you say that the habits are formed, it is not only the habit, it's culture. So there is whole culture of fooding, and it is very interesting when last time in this session you mentioned about corner house and you mentioned about the dining hall and how the foods have a different, the whole philosophy of food is different because it is the corner house is meant for anyone doing rigorous physical education, including teachers, because eggs and chicken is served there, and you need it because your body gets hurt. Though I mean, it gets damaged when you do exercise. There's a normal damage and healing going on inside the body. So the doctors are there. I mean, in fact, I was sorting my notes. We have interesting research papers published in international journals from the physical education department. So I see all of this, what the mother is talking about, as an ideal and perfect thing. But there is a culture, and even for that matter, there is even a culture of food and ashram food. And people have emotional attachment. In my case, because I did ethnography and it was field notes. So in my case, the field notes were banana, were kaju toast, which students were really, really passionate about because they were getting it from ashram. So I think what mother is trying to say here is not only perfect and ideal, but perfect from a medical viewpoint. But there is a whole culture, and there is a human being, and it is not that people who come back to corner house are hogging on bananas or on the food. They get emotional. They said, "Oh, this is the banana I have grown," and I used to complain कि एक ही तरह का केला मिलता है. Or when I went in the outside world, like they say, and when I came back, this is the first thing I want to eat. So like Anuradha was saying, maybe that becomes prasad for them. However, no, there are no emotional, this kind of religious tone attached over there. I mean, as far as my data was concerned at that time. So I believe the cultural and the emotional aspect which individuals report has to be juxtaposed with what the mother is talking about, and then only we can understand really. Because otherwise ना हम वो दो एक exclusive categories बना देते हैं और फिर दुनिया में भी बहुत अलग हो जाते हैं क्योंकि हम दुनिया को नहीं समझते हैं. और मैं ये नहीं कह रही हूँ कि that we put what mother is saying in a box and then we try to understand the word. We can really keep it as a paradigm, but not to judge, but to see if this doesn't happen, then what are the reasons people do just opposite to it? What are their reasons? What is their wisdom or ignorance or whatever? So I would request that as far as food is concerned, we try to look at these, the emotions attached with Dadi ke laddu and also the cultural notions with it. So that's just something I have also done by not rejecting either of the views, because a beautiful mosaic is formed if one tries to, not you, if one tries to, and I have tried. I've been super excited about this mosaic. So mosaic of ideas about food in which emotion, culture, and what the mother is talking about is important. I don't know if I was able to explain myself in this limited time, but all I would say is
But
enjoy it.
not very clear, I must say. At least to me, it wasn't very clear. I mean, I tried listening and I think I heard everything, but the voice quality is not very coming across very well.
Yeah, Didi, that happens when I put my headphones. I need to put a separate mic to
Okay.
attach with it. So I will try to write a small note in a blog sort of thing and share it with the citations from what we are reading right now. So I'll do that. My apology.
Fine. Thank you. One more line I want to highlight is this one. Food should be chosen and apportioned according to the age of the child and the activities. So it will also vary, and also that suits their temperament. See, she is bringing in these qualifications. So it is not one rule for all. These are the basic principles, but it has to suit the child's temperament. It has to suit the age of the child and the kind of activities the child is involved with. And yet it has to be simple and healthy and those kind of things. Okay, so let's continue. Swapnika, you want to read this paragraph?
Sure, Didi. Since the child will be given only the food that helps to keep him healthy and provide him with the energy. Sorry, one sec, I'm going to restart. Since the child will be given only the food that helps to keep him healthy and provide him with the energy he needs, one must be very careful not to use food as a means of correction and punishment. Coercion, I'm not able to. The practice of telling a child, you have not been a good boy, you won't get any dessert, etc., is most harmful. In this way, you create in his little consciousness the impression that food is given to him chiefly to satisfy his greed and not because it is indispensable for the proper functioning of his body.
Okay. Before we discuss this, I think Kirti was wanting to say something. Welcome, Kirti.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
See, what I wanted to ask, it's connected to the last para that you read. A paragraph before that, a mother is saying not to force the child to eat something which he doesn't want to. Instinctively he knows. But then the desire and need thing comes now. So how would we know that what child is wanting to eat is out of desire or out of need?
Yeah, so that's what I said. This is the most crucial thing, to distinguish between desire and need. Prerna said intuitively, as a mother, she knows or she knew. Uh, so one has to, and Harpreet is pointing all these layers, there's to kind of layers which we have to see together. So in the previous paragraph, when she's always, the mother emphasizes that each problem has to have an individual solution. These are broad principles, but still we have to look at each situation, and then it is our call in that moment what to do. It cannot be rule number 6 has to be applied. It cannot be like that. Now she says, very important to remember the instinct of the body so long as it remains intact. You see, these qualifying phrases are important. Instinct of the body, but when? So long as it remains intact. So now the question is, if a child's instinct of the body is intact, then don't force him. But if that already has been spoiled through mental notions, vital impulses, then you have to intervene. But again, from what space you intervene, that only so these are two positions. Child knows best, I know best. Actually, neither knows best because we are already mixed up. So one has to gauge and sometimes play little games to find out. For example, well, that is what she's saying not to do, but just for making the concept clear, I'm telling you. For example, if there is a child who says, I will not eat this vegetable, and I'm wondering whether this child really doesn't want the vegetable, the body is refusing, or is it just a caprice? And if I say, okay, if you eat this vegetable, I'm going to uh, give you your favorite dessert, which should not be, okay? I'm just giving an example, but it happens a lot of times. So, and the child says, okay, then I'll eat. Then it is clear it's not the body's instinct, no? The child is just, because now there is a greater desire, so the child is able to eat it, what the child was rejecting earlier. So it is all desire based. So these kind of games, which one can play with oneself also, for finding out what is one really needing and what is the desire, that kind of a thing one can find. Now, there are times, okay, let's not go into that. But so we have to see that this intervention of mental notions of vital impulses, this it has to be free of that. But on the other hand, like I was saying, all these things, that delinking and what mother is saying here, this is something which parents so often do. Like if you are good, I'll give you your favorite thing to eat. If you're not good, you will not get that. There is no relationship between the action and the consequence. And then it becomes a reward punishment system, which has no basis, which gives the wrong message. And then the food becomes either a reward of punishing or a means of punishing or a means of rewarding. And it loses its significance as something which the body needs without rewards punishment. It's the need of the body to remain healthy. Actually, on the surface, it seems all very simple, but because so much of our life revolves around food, if you see, people, when they get depressed, they eat or they stop eating. A lot of our emotions are tied up with food, how we were fed. A lot of people have developed an aversion to food or a greed for food, or emotional insecurity plays. So, this is actually a very important topic and important to practice also.
What you have said, emotional, what is it?
Emotional, what is it? Meaning?
You just said na emotional something just right now.
Uh,
You
Sorry,
said that it's
authority, insecurity. Some people,
huh?
for example, whether it is bulimia or anorexia, these eating disorders
Okay.
have a psychological cause and then they are connected to the food. And other people also, when they are angry or they are upset or they are depressed, their response to food changes. So obviously, it is being guided by the vital rather than the body.
How do we know what food it's guided? Matlab, depends on our vital and our
We're talking
it,
black boxes. I don't like it. Most people have kept their cameras off, and I feel like I'm talking to black boxes.
oh, no, 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 because it's very yes,
So
yes, Didi.
to study yourself.
Sorry, I'm going to be leaping in and out today, so I'll have to keep my camera off. So.
Acha, Ila, do you want to say anything in this area?
Uh, well, as you know, I always have something to say about these kinds of things, but um, I think the issue really is that, I mean, I really believe that the physical is so interlinked with the mind that you can't see one without the other. And I think that whatever the prescription has to be done for both. So when you're saying that the body has to be like this, the food that you feed the body has to be like this, the kind of nourishment it needs is this, you also need to prescribe what the mind needs to be doing at the same time, because they work in sync. It's not that you can say this is all that the body needs. The body needs only this much. It doesn't. It needs the nourishment of the mind. The mind is like, to my mind, the mind is like the backbone of the physical. You don't have that backbone, you don't have that strength, you won't be able to develop the body sufficiently, no matter what you do to it. If your mind is in a mess, whatever you do, you will not be able to get your body to work the way it's meant to. So I think, I think that's the only thing I'd like to say, that one has to be prescriptive on both fronts simultaneously.
I agree with you, but what you're saying, I feel, applies more as we grow up with little children. And that is what the mother began with, that body is a being of habits. So, the context here of this writing is not so much for adults. It is like if you can begin early setting habits, because
I
the minds are not so developed at that stage. So,
Okay.
to set the right habits and give the messages, the correct messages, the associations. Yeah.
So my view on that is exactly the same. I don't see children as children. I see them as like full beings. So I think that when you teach the child about either, say, let's say, creating a habit, You wake up in the morning, you eat something, you go to the loo, you do whatever, whatever. You're creating habits, right? Around the care of the body. The habit of what the mind should be doing at that time also needs to be created. So, for example, to eat with thought, to chew properly, to think about what you're eating, to eat consciously, you need to start that when they're 0. You can't start that when they're 15 or any form of adult. So I still feel that not in the way in which maybe adults need the mind body connect, but children need to be taught how to connect the mind and the body and to see it as one and not to see it as this is the body and this needs to be, this is the routine. I think it's more than that. And I think it's very applicable to children too.
Yeah, yeah, that I agree with. That is something, yeah, so it's not so much applying the will or that kind of thing. It is more about doing things mindfully and knowing what the food does to you. And also, when you are not focused on the food and are focused on something else and just talking and eating and doing various things or running around and then eating a bite or walking everywhere, which is what children do, uh, then what it does. So, those kind of things, yes, definitely, that the mind and body have to be in the same space. Yeah. Okay, so Sagarika, what I was saying is that you have to observe yourself. The best way of learning is you, what you do, and try and identify in yourself when it was a desire, when it was a need, uh, etc. What is to be made for dinner today, for example. So, what part of your being responds? How do you choose? What will you have for breakfast? Sometimes it's pure convenience, sometimes it can be various things, but just see what are the various factors which come in. Like, for example, today I had planned something to eat something healthy, but suddenly my co teacher, Manish, he messaged that he's sick, and I had no time. I had to rush to school, so I ate very unhealthy bread quickly because I had to rush. There was no time to make anything. Okay, Prerna, you want to read this?
Thank you. Another thing should be taught to a child from his early years to enjoy cleanliness and observe hygienic habits. But in obtaining this cleanliness and the respect for the rules of hygiene from the child, one must take great care not to instill into him the fear of illness. Fear is a worst instrument of education and surest way of attracting what is feared. Yet, while there should be no fear of illness, there should be no inclination for it either. There is a prevalent belief that brilliant minds are found in weak bodies. This is delusion and has no basis. There was perhaps a time when a romantic and morbid taste of physical unbalance prevailed. But fortunately, that tendency has disappeared. Nowadays, a well-built, robust, muscular, strong, and well-balanced body is appreciated at its true value. In any case, children should be taught to respect health and admire the healthy man whose vigorous body knows how to repel attacks of illness. Often a child find,
Hmm.
sorry, I'm not able to spell this. Often a child finds okay, illness to avoid some troublesome obligation, a work that does not interest him, or simply to soften his parents. hard and get them to satisfy some caprice. The child must be taught as early as possible that this does not work, and he does not become more interesting by being ill, but rather the contrary. The weak has a tendency to believe that their weakness makes them particularly interesting, and to use this weakness and, if necessary, even illness as a means of attracting the attention and sympathy of people around them. On no account should this be presumptuous tendency to be encouraged. Children should therefore be taught that to be ill is a sign of weakness and inferiority, not of some virtue or sacrifice.
Okay. Well, all and so contrary to what happens, no? So contrary.
You see how the mind is so important in this?
Hmm. Yes, it is. So let's look at the concepts. So when she's talking of hygiene, she's saying don't create a fear of illness. You know, wash your hands, otherwise you will fall ill. Do this, otherwise this will happen. You know, all the time we link it to it might happen, that is true. But to develop a taste for hygiene, a habit of hygiene, rather than creating a fear of illness. And at the same time, and of course, she throws in this sentence uh, fear is the surest way of attracting what is feared. So, which is again, you know, at the vital and the psychological level, that whatever we fear, we actually attract it.
But this is an affirmation. This is what affirmation, this is how affirmations work. When
Hmm.
you repeating it every day, so you know you will get sick, you will get sick, you will get sick, you will get sick.
Yes. Yes. And so she, but then she also says, while there should be no illness, there should be no inclination, no desire to fall ill also. So there has to be a balance, you know, basically just don't think about illness, neither to attract it nor to desire it or fear it. This has already, I think, 75 years ago, this was more true, and especially the Victorian times when it was considered fashionable to be weak and to be dainty and delicate, especially for women. Today, thankfully, we are living in a different world to some extent, at least in this area. So, but yet the psychological attitudes persist. Nowadays, weakness is not looked upon as a sign of beauty, but the psychological attitudes persist. The moment somebody is ill, we are so full of sympathy. Even if the person has brought it on themselves by behaving in the most foolish manner, we are like, oh, you know, what has happened to this person? I'm talking of grown ups here, of course. Feigns, Prerna feigns, the child pretends
Okay, thank you. Okay.
illness to avoid some troublesome. So she says that sometimes it can happen because the child knows that the parents will be sympathetic. So if the child wants to avoid something or not does not want to do something, the child may feign illness or to satisfy some desire and all that. And that again, that is true because when children are ill, we tend to give them their favorite food, give them their favorite this thing, give them the sweet, etc., etc., and so much attention. So a child who's seeking attention, illness can become a very good means to always get the parents attention. So here of course the vital is coming in. And then talking about, and this happens with all of us, the drawing room conversations. If you evaluate how many conversations are about around health and illness. Okay. Yes, Pooja. Why don't you go ahead and read this?
That is why, as soon as the child is able to make use of his limbs, some time should be devoted every day to the methodical and regular development of all the parts of his body. Every day, some 20 or 30 minutes, preferably on walking if possible, will be enough to ensure the proper functioning and balanced growth of his muscles while preventing any stiffening of the joints and of the spine, which occurs much sooner than one thinks. In the general program of the child's education, sports and outdoor games should be given a prominent place. That, more than all the medicines in the world, will assure the child good health. An hour's moving about in the sun does more to cure weakness or even anemia than a whole arsenal of tonics. My advice is that medicine should not be used unless it is absolutely impossible to avoid them. And this absolutely impossible should be very strict. In this program of physical culture, although there are well known general lines to be followed for the best development of the body, still, if the method is to be fully effective in each case, it should be considered individually. If possible, with the help of a competent person, or if not, by consulting the numerous manuals that have already been and are still being published on the subject.
Very interesting. You know, the mother, if you when we read the later chapters, vital, mental, psychic, she never brings in this competent person. That work has to be done by ourselves. In the physical, she's saying if you really want to develop a systematic program, it is good because you know physical can be damaged if we do the wrong exercise, the wrong diet, and then that damage is very difficult to repair. So it is very important, but also one has to take good care. Yeah, please. Anybody wants to comment, share, ask? It's quite a straightforward paragraph about exercise, sports. And you know, in the ashram, how much importance even 90-year-olds, they have to go and exercise every day. So it is a discipline that the mother said that everybody has to exercise.
Especially like the emphasis on medicines. Matlab, nowadays, medicine is,
Ataxe.
yeah, matlab it's, everyone feels, matlab it's for sleeping, for anything. Your body needs how much sleep or not. They, so much dependency on the medical.
And we are seeing what the medicines are doing to the body, no? The after effects, especially the allopathic medicines, the after effects are tremendous. Okay. Kirti, you want to read this paragraph?
Um, but in any case, a child, whatever his activities, should have a sufficient number of hours of sleep. The number will vary according to his age. In the cradle, the baby should sleep longer than he remains awake. The number of hours of sleep will diminish as the child grows, but until maturity, it should not be less than 8 hours in a quiet, well ventilated place. The child should never be made to stay up late for no reason. The hours before midnight are the best for resting the nerves. Even during the waking hours, relaxation is indispensable for all who want to maintain their nervous balance. To know how to relax the muscles and the nerves is an art which should be taught to children when they are very young. There are many parents who, on the contrary, push their children to constant activity. When the child remains quiet, they imagine that he is ill. There are even parents who have the bad habit of making their child do household work at the expense of his rest and relaxation. Nothing is worse for developing a nervous system which cannot stand the strain of too continuous an effort or of an activity that is imposed upon it and not freely chosen. at the risk of going against many current ideas and ruffling prejudices. I hold that it is not fair to demand service from a child as it were his duty to serve his parents. The contrary would be more true, and certainly it is natural that parents should serve their child or at least take great care of him. It is only if a child chooses freely to work for his family and does this work as play that the thing is admissible. And even then, one must be careful that it is in no way diminishes the hours of rest that are absolutely indispensable for his body to function properly.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment. I have a comment, Anuradha.
Please go ahead.
So my comment is that if you replace the word child with adult, it would work perfectly well. It is just so commonsensical, and it is actually true for every single age. It's not really just for babies. Of course, if you establish a great pattern when you're a baby, then it's brilliant. But this is exactly what you need at every stage of your life.
Are you referring to because she's spoken about sleep, rest, relaxation,
Everything, all, the whole lot.
work that you do rather than it being imposed on you?
Exactly. All this, like take any line. When the child remains quiet, they imagine that he's ill.
Mhm.
True
Yeah.
for you. There are even parents with the bad habit of making their child do household work at the expense of rest and relaxation. Look at the number of women who fall sick because of this. Nothing is worse for a developing nervous system which cannot stand the strain of too continuous of an effort or activity that is imposed upon it, not freely chosen. True for everyone. At the risk of going against many current ideas and calling many and ruffling many prejudices, I hold that it is not fair to demand service from a child as if it were his duty to serve his parents. True of everybody. Forget about a child. Just don't do stuff because you think it's your duty and you think this is the right way things should be done. Really think about what you're doing, what is required. And that's really all she's saying. She's saying, don't do stuff which you think is that
Mm.
a child, I'm a parent, you have to serve me.
So I would qualify a little, Leela.
Yeah.
At one level, I agree with you.
Hmm.
Look at this sentence or phrase. Nothing is worse for a developing nervous system till your nerves have developed. Because elsewhere, Sri Aurobindo and Mother have also talked about developing nerves of steel. That
Mhm.
nothing can impact you. Your nerves become so strong through your emotional, psychological training and physical training that whatever happens in life,
Yeah.
there is no nervous response, that kind of a thing.
So let me give you a counterpoint.
Grow up and we are in a job. There are times we have to do things which are imposed on us. We don't have luxury. And if body falls ill, then it is a problem. So it is not that throughout, it would be wonderful if we never had to do things which are imposed on us, but the body has to develop that strength to be able to also do things which it may not choose freely.
So does that mean that nerves of steel can only be developed from the time you're a baby?
No, but the training has to happen. It won't happen immediately.
Exactly. So my point is this, that even say, for example, at my age, I can also start learning how to develop nerves of steel, right? In which case, my system is also a developing nervous system, not as fragile as that of a child, but in the same way, we are all works in progress to that extent.
That extent we are, but a developing nervous system is like it has now acquired its own identity. Your bones and muscles are not have the same suppleness and things like with little children, like you said, never lift them up with the arms because the nikal sakta hai. There is a certain age, the way you massage and all, because they are developing. And once they develop, it is a little different. So yes, in principle, yes, but unfortunately, we don't have that luxury, most people. So
I need to say something.
yes, Pooja.
So I would say that the time that she's written about this demanding work from children was a time when people always had their children working for them and taking care of everything and doing all the household chores, and the kind of people generally existed like that. But nowadays, children are and should be made to do chores, not the whole work, but they should be given responsibility and chores, because that's a very important way of getting them to become. And also because now everybody is working, like parents are working, and also to teach your children, and especially the boys, that all the household chores also are equally shared by husband, wife, and the children. And making the kids do chores in the house, giving them responsibility, not nagging them, but making them do chores as their responsibility, is a very good way of making them self-reliant and getting them to appreciate their own self.
Of course, it all depends on what age you do that, like the developing nervous system part, and if it is at the cost of their rest and relaxation, plus where they feel, rather than it being people of imposition, they feel that yes, they have chosen it and
Yes.
they're doing it, and they're feeling that sense of, like little children, when you're doing something and they feel this is a grown-up task, they also want to help, you know, and they feel, yes, now I'm also big. So that is a different thing. But also, we are talking of in a very select group. Uh, of course, all over India, I mean, the people who are poor, they have no choice but to make their children do the household work, and even at the cost of their education. So we know that reality also. That happens. Okay. So we have only two paragraphs left. Maybe we can try and finish it. Who hasn't read? Harpreet, can you read? And Ila, if she can read?
No, I can't. I have this problem focusing with my eyes going on for a few months. I'm difficult for me to focus on this.
Go ahead.
I might have to go, Anuradha, in the middle of the thing, so I can read till I get a call to leave. So if you're okay with that,
Go ahead.
okay. Where shall I start from?
I have said.
Okay. I have said that from a young age, children should be taught to respect good health, physical strength, and balance. The great importance of beauty must also be emphasized. A young child should aspire for beauty, not for the sake of pleasing others or winning their admiration, but for the love of beauty itself. For beauty is the ideal which all physical life must realize. Every human being has the possibility of establishing harmony among the different parts of his body and the various movements of the body in action. Every human body that undergoes a rational method of culture from the very beginning of its existence can realize its own harmony and thus become fit to manifest beauty. When we speak of the other aspects of an integral education, we shall see what inner conditions are to be fulfilled so that this beauty can one day be manifested. Very nice.
Yeah. So obviously, she doesn't mean the cosmetic beauty.
Yeah.
She's talking of a deeper beauty, is the footprint of the divine, showing us where he has walked. So she's talking about beauty in essence, where the inner harmony reflects in the face, in the
I to me it sounds like when your body is in when you're very very fit, you kind of glow with health. So you have a sort of beauty which comes from the inside out. And to me, that glowing comes from when your mind is in the right space, your body is in the right space. So you have this sort of inner glow, and I think that's the kind of beauty.
So she is saying the inner conditions are to be fulfilled for the beauty to be manifested.
Right.
Look at them later. So obviously these inner conditions are to do with the vital, the mind, and the psychic. Clear? Any questions on this paragraph? Okay, so the last I will read. So far, I have referred only to the education to be given to children. For a good many bodily defects can be rectified and many malformations avoided by an enlightened physical education given at the proper time. But if for any reason this physical education has not been given during childhood or even in youth. It can begin at any age and be pursued throughout life. But the later one begins, the more one must be prepared to meet bad habits that have to be corrected, rigidities to be made supple, malformations to be rectified. And this preparatory work will require much patience and perseverance before one can start on a constructive program for the harmonization of the form and its movement. But if you keep alive within you the ideal of beauty that is to be realized, sooner or later, you are sure to reach the goal you have set yourself. So this is the hope for us. Beauty comes, the ideal has to be there, but there has to be a lot of preparatory work to rectify the defects which have already developed, whether it's posture, in terms of posture, how we sit, or what we eat, our attitude to pain and health and rest, sleep habits, all that. And this shift is happening in the last 10 years, 15 years, in India even. People are opening up to physical education. Like, I, of course, being a friend of Ila has helped me a lot. Seeing her, we are kind of similar age, and seeing what she does with the physical has inspired me. But I'm seeing even my brother in law who's 76, because I started strength training 2 months back. He has started strength training at 76 and he's enjoying it. And I would have never imagined that a few years back that this could happen. But it is kind of a ripple effect which is happening. Something happening all over. I just wanted to touch upon these three that we have understood. The three. First one we talked about, the internal. This is the movements and correction of any defects and deformities. I think maybe she speaks in the commentaries. So the little child, that is what parents, the pediatrics do. If there is any like थोड़ा सा टेढ़ा है अगर लेग तो वो मसाज के थ्रू उसको ठीक करते हैं, हियरिंग चेक करते हैं. So that is very important with little children, that correction of any defects and deformities happen. That's why she's put it as part of physical education. So she's talking of what is to be done with little kids.
For this, I have so much gratitude for Sunaina, Didi, and Lavani. When Lakshay was in Lavani, nobody noticed that he has a little, while walking, uska knee thoda bent hota tha. So she made a note of it. She shared with us and asked us ki please do the massage and bit of that, and rest of the things I'm working at the school. And today he plays such a good soccer. So yes, so that's something very, we have so much gratitude for that. And one more thing, even when we talk about food in the schools, there are so many schools where food is served, but not over
No.
there. Also, food is served as a facility, like a transport. Food is there, but
What?
nobody is taking care from a nutritional value, from a relationship value, from a thought value, conduct. There are so many things. Every day a child goes, food is given 30 minutes, food period is there in every school.
So how will they do it?
Yeah.
Normal attitude towards food.
Mhm.
I would say on this, the schools which I have been associated with and which serve meals, there is a planned participation of parent body and nutritionists who plan the meal, and the food is served as a basis to develop communal eating. And when they are children, the teacher very gently encourages them to try everything, to eat everything, and to take in a healthy meal.
Where is this?
And pardon?
Which place are you talking about?
I had an experience with Shikshantar with both my children of the same, and even in Shriram, of course now the child is was in middle school and then high school, but the same kind of care is taken because even though I don't like it, but the food is mentioned with calories and everything, which I sometimes I feel that plays a lot on your head. But it's and it's planned. The whole meal is planned with like veggies and proteins and fruits and all of that. Yeah, and also taking care of what the children need. So some places like Shriram and Shikshantar, I have had good experience. Of course, the children, when they start coming to middle school and to high school, they don't want to eat all that, and then they come and complain. But that's okay, because I think that when we are giving them such good food and all the choices at home, a little bit of a discomfort and going out of, they should be accustomed to everything.
Yes.
Adaptability.
So we have overshot the time, unless there is something very crucial. Let's end here. And next time we will, Pooja, there must be commentaries now on this chapter also. So we will take up the mother's question answers when people have asked her questions regarding this writing of hers.
Yes, there are.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.